one of the questions that I know right out the gate that some students might have, I've talked to students personally who want to go into the medical field, and they want to go into even working with kids, in the medical field. And maybe even I've specifically talked to students who want to be pediatricians. So what does that type of career pathway look for you? I mean, like, did you wake up one day and decided you wanted to be a pediatrician? And how did you start in another field and then decided you want to go there? What did that career journey look like for you?
So I was very young when I decided I wanted to be a physician. I remember announcing it at about 5. Now, my mother was a nurse, my father was a doctor, and I don't know, just at that time, I just decided that's what I was going to do, and probably had too much focus. I do remember taking piano lessons as a young child, and when I was told to practice my scales, I said, why would I practice them? I'm going to play the piano till I'm 18, and then I'm going to go to college and medical school, and I'm going to be a doctor. And I actually think I would have played the piano better if I had practiced my scales early on, but I didn't know that I wanted to be a pediatrician until I was in medical school. I just knew I wanted to be a physician. And so you don't really have to choose the specifics of your career direction too early. So I went to medical school. I decided at some point in medical school, I really did try and figure out what am I going to do next, and thought about internal medicine, obstetrics and gynecology, but then I just decided, you know what, I like kids. I want to be with them. And so that's when I decided pediatrics. And when I was in my pediatric residency, it was about halfway through, and the director of the program was just checking in on me and asked me, how are you doing? Do you feel like you've gotten what you want out of this program? And I looked at him and I said, I went into pediatrics because I like kids. And I said, what fascinated me was how they start as infants and then they end up as children, and they learn all this stuff really quickly. 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I said, I really was fascinated on how that happens. And to be quite honest, I was in actually probably the top ranked children's hospital training program. And I said, I've gotten a really good education, and I now know how to take care of sicknesses that children get. I don't feel like I know anything more about what it means to be a child. Like, child development at that point, it wasn't really part of the training. They just didn't do it. And so he just looked at me and he said, you need to go into behavioral pediatrics. And he recommended the program, and that actually was the best one in the country and for what I was interested in. And then I went for 3 more years of training after becoming a pediatrician.
Yeah. So in addition to being a pediatrician, you're a developmental behavioral pediatrician. So how does that specific focus come into your career? Is that what you needed an additional 3 years of training for?
Yeah. So, you go to medical school, and then after medical school, you do residency. So I did residency for 3 years in pediatrics. So then I was boarded as a pediatrician. And then I went for 3 more years to learn about common developmental and behavioral concerns. And I know it sounds like that's a long training, but to be quite honest, I started the fellowship. When I started, it was only a 2-year fellowship, and it changed to a 3-year one. And they offered, do you want to move into the 3-year one, which includes research and academics? And at that point, that was probably the first time in my life where I said, you know what, I actually really love what I'm doing. I'll keep doing it. Like fellowship, there wasn't any night call. I was teaching, I was doing research. I was really pursuing what I wanted. And so I was like, sign me up for another year. And from that point on, before I was training to become what I wanted to be in developmental behavioral pediatrics, I think I was finally what I wanted to be.
Can I ask?
But go ahead.
Oh, do you remember, was there like a specific moment when you were in medical school that kind of stuck out for you, that you were like, because I know you said, oh, I liked working with kids, and I knew, like, I kind of think that I wanted to work with kids, but was there like any kind of like moment where you're like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be, like this feels like the place?
To me, it's when I had the opportunity to kind of meet young kids that were relatives, and I remember some family friend, friends of my parents, and I would visit, and it was a toddler that was like 2, and for whatever reason, this kid became attached to me. I didn't see him that often. And so he would just like, they put him down for a nap and you could hear him in his crib, pounding David, David, like he just kept chanting my name. And I'm like, what's this kid doing? Like this, he's so freaking cute. And I just got to a point in medicine where I was doing the training and I realized, yeah, the science was interesting, the illnesses were interesting, but I really just wanted to be with kids. I wanted to figure out how, and it's the same thing. My research is school-based research. And when I was trying to figure out what my research career would be, I was like, I want to be in a classroom. I want to teach kids. So now I'm a doctor, so I can't just go back and teach, but I can do research in how to do that. And that gives me a chance to teach lessons and really then study how do kids learn. Because that was what fascinated me. So it was a certain point where I just decided, you know what, I'm not going to do what's you're supposed to do or what's makes money or is prestigious. I went into this because I want to help kids. And so that's what I'm going to do.
And you bring up a good point, because a lot of times medical school seems really intimidating to students because of how long it takes to go through. But I think the point that you made is you were studying things that you liked. I mean, to be a counselor, it takes, you have to go through undergrad for 4 years and then another 3 years to finish. So it could take 7 years, but you're also taking classes that you want to learn for the most part. So that must have helped you as well.
Well, I also think, in medical school, you have your preclinical courses, and that's probably 2 years. But even now, they get you into clinical settings from early on, even in your first year. And so, yes, you're going through a lot of coursework and training, but a lot of it is clinical training where you're still helping people and you're doing what's meaningful. I mean, I will tell you, in my medical school, this was a long time ago, so there was a lot more independence. There's a little bit more rules now. But I had patients when I was in my first clinical year, in third year of medical school, who, I remember one kid, when I say kid, I think he was probably about 20. And he got into a motorcycle accident, and it was a bad accident. He came in and he ended up having to have his spleen removed. And so he was in the emergency room, and I met him and introduced myself, but he was kind of in shock at the time, like literally had lost a lot of blood. And so I remember on the last day, as he was getting discharged, he was on the phone, he was talking to someone. He said, "Oh, excuse me, my doc just came in," and he said, "You know what, I'm going to apologize. You introduced yourself to me in the emergency room, and I don't remember your name." So I told him my name, and he goes, "You didn't say doctor." I was like, "I'm actually a medical student." He goes, "You're a senior?" And I go, "No, actually, I'm earlier than that." And he just gave me this look, and I said, "I did not do the operation. Trust me. I've just been following you, and they've been supervising me." But he just was like, "I thought you were my doctor." So you really did have situations where you were doing something that felt really meaningful, and you were learning stuff that it seems very vital and important. And so it's not like you're just taking courses because you have certain credits you have to reach. You're really doing something both that you enjoy, and I will say in medicine, like in counseling too, you're helping people. And if that's what drives you to the field, you start doing it pretty early in your training. So it keeps you engaged. It's the same way if you go to get a doctorate, PhD, and that can take a long period of time. But you reach a certain point where you're not just trying to get to some place. You're already in the field, and it seems worthwhile.